Good day. We all know the first world champion Wilhelm Steinitz as the author of the theory of positional play and a purely positional chess player, but at the beginning of his chess career he was also an excellent combinator and attacker. Today we will look at the game in which he met against another similar combinator, Adolf Andersen. This game was played in 1873 in Vienna. Steinitz played white and started the game with d4, his opponent responded with d5. After the initial moves, the position on the board was Queen's Gambit decline. Here white pins the enemy knight, black defends against the pin and prepares castling with the move e3. White has opened the way for the development of the light-squared bishop. Black has hidden the king in a safe place. White develops and black is trying to solve one of the most important problems of the Queen's Gambit, refused. The problem with the development of the white bishop, which rests in their own pawns. They solve this problem by moving b6 with the intention of fianchéing the bishop to a large diagonal from where it will influence the center and the kingside of white. After developing moves, bishop d3 and bishop b7, white castled, black developed a piece to the center and an exchange followed on square d5. Then the first champion sets the rook on a half-open line, from where it will put pressure on the pawn c7. Black responds with c5 and here Wilhelm Steinitz decides to exchange on square c5. Now if black is captured with a piece, then they end up with an isolated queen's pawn in the center, which will be weak in the end, but the move in Andersen's game bc leads to a situation with hanging pawns. There are a lot of studies, books and videos about the strength and weakness of hanging pawns. It's easy to find this on channels and playlists that are called Hanging Pawns. By rummaging through search engines, you can get acquainted with all the materials. The only thing I can add here is that these pawns are weak for the end because they are not protected by their colleagues. These pawns have to be protected by pieces, and the fewer pieces there are on the board, the weaker the pawns will be. The advantages of this position of the pawns include spatial conquests for black as well as open lines and, accordingly, the opportunity to carry out all sorts of explosions. Either the move d4 with an attack on the king's side or the move c4 with play along the b-line against the weakened pawn b2. These are the plans of the parties. Here Wilhelm Steinitz moved queen a4 connecting the rooks, which is one of the goals of the opening. Black could maintain equality by continuing h6 by attacking the enemy bishop. After the bishop retreats, they have two options: to actively play d4 and carry out the same aforementioned breakthrough, and here, after capturing d4 on the square, black spoils white's pawn structure, but as compensation for this, white receives the advantage of two bishops, so the position is a position with mutual chances and, in principle, black can play this position, or after the bishop retreats, black can respond more modestly with the b6 knight to attack the queen, and here white retains a slight advantage and the opportunity to play against these weakened pawns. In our game, Adolf Andersen plays the knight e4. This was one of the first attempts to centralize the knight in this way with hanging pawns, and this attempt was unsuccessful because Wilhelm Steinitz found an excellent combination that led white to a clearly better position. So the combination begins with the move bishop e4. Apparently Andersen was counting only on capturing on the square e7, then after the response the queen e7 white could take on e4 to spoil black's pawn structure, or rather weaken the pawn on square c5. But as compensation black gets a spatial advantage and also views on attack on the king's side, which is currently not defended by any white piece. Here the position would be with mutual chances, but the fact is that white found a stronger move, namely the move bishop e4. They immediately take the piece now, after capturing the pawn on the square e4. Steinitz moves the rook to square d1 and attacks the knight on square d7. Now black does not have time to take on square f3 since there will be rook d7 attacking the queen, and after the queen retreats, white wins a piece, then also takes the exchange on f8 and gets a winning position. So black's only move here is to capture on g5. Now white has changed and captured on d7, penetrating the rook into the glutton row. The rook is now attacking the bishop, attacking the f7 pawn in the black camp. The pawns on squares e4 and c5 have also been weakened. What should black do now? If they simply remove the bishop on square c8, then there will be rook d5 attacking the queen and the pawn on square c5 falls. If they defend the bishop with a rook from square a8, then simple queen a7. White again puts pressure on the bishop located on square b7 and takes a closer look to the pawn on f7. Well, to the move in the game rook fb8, white responds with queen b3, attacking the bishop on b7 and striking the pawn f7 with a double strike. Black has no special options. He needs to somehow protect the piece. He simply removes this piece from the battlefield. Well, now check on f7 after the retreat of the king h4 is a distraction. White is trying to distract the queen from defending the g7 point and checkmate black here. Of course, Andersen sees all this. He plays queen g4, but now white takes another pawn on a7, and after the exchange on a7, the attacked rook takes the pawn on b2. White takes on c5, they already have 2 extra pawns. And besides everything else, black's 8th rank is very weak. In addition, white attacks the bishop and also threatens to checkmate on the f8 square. Black therefore defends by queen e6 in order to respond to the move queen f8 with queen g8. But now rook d1 creates a threat to move rook d8 and also creates a threat to move rook d6 with a gain of a piece. Black has no way to defend against these 2 threats. He has also made the move a6 window for the king. But after the response rook d6 and queen f7, white defends himself from checkmate. That is, now mate is threatened in 2 moves. Queen f2 and queen g2 with mate. So white defends against mate. Black has 2 pieces under attack. The rook on b2 and the bishop on c6. Andersen here plays rook and e2 with the idea of going rook e1, but the simple king f1 protects against all threats. White attacks the rook and the bishop, and already in this position black has no way to defend against all white's threats. Therefore, Adolf Andersen admitted that he was defeated. Thus, the first world champion Wilhelm Steinitz used combinations to exploit the weakness of the 7th and then the 8th rank in the black position and won a beautiful victory over Adolf Andersen.